I was at the World Championships, and I was getting ready to try the open world record in the squat. And I was just so welled up inside. I was excited. But I was like, I can only do this with the God-given strength and with him on my side. And I wanted to keep me safe. I didn't knowingly say it out loud. I was thinking of saying it in my head, but the Holy Spirit had other ideas. And I screamed it and got up, squatted the world record. Everything was good. And I don't think I said it again the whole rest of the competition. But, I actually posted it. I had people on Facebook reach out to me and say, "Oh, I didn't know you were a Christian. Can we pray together at the next competition?" I actually had someone come up to me in 2016 at a World Championships, and she's like, Are you you and me, God? And I was like, yeah, I guess. And she's like, "Can you pray with me? I'm having a really, really rough meet."
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 Strength and Health Authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the Strong by Design podcast. I'm your host, Jo Miller, aka Jo Animal. Some of you may recognize me. Some of you may not. If you don't know who I am, you can look me up in past episodes. We'll put those episodes in the show notes so you know how to find out about this crazy person. Thank you so much for joining our show. We really appreciate your support. Thank you for following, subscribing, sharing, commenting. We really appreciate it. We hope and pray this podcast blesses you beyond measure. And we want you to know you're in for a real treat today. You have a front row seat to some serious inspiration with our amazing guest, Suzanne Hartwig-Gary. Susie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jo. I really appreciate you having me on.
I'm sorry you lost the bet and then you were forced to do this. Actually, sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. I don't remember that bet, but...
Oh, good. Okay, we'll just say that you agreed to this. Yes. Well, for those of you out there who haven't been blessed with the opportunity to know Susie, let me share a little bit about her. I'm truly honored to have her here today, and she is one of my all-time favorite humans, super inspirational. She is a living legend in many ways, and the ultimate Iron Woman, especially in powerlifting. But as you get to know her better, you'll see that she's one of the strongest women in the world, humans in the world, but her character is even stronger, which is even more impressive. And I wanted to share a little bit before we dive in how we met. I first heard about Susie about 15 years ago or more from a mutual friend at a gym. I was working as a personal trainer in downtown Baltimore, and my friend Dave Kafis was always doing these really cool workouts, and I was constantly bugging him with questions because I had never met anyone who competed in powerlifting. And he was training for competitions. I'd see him wear these crazy bench suits, and he competed equipped and raw. And after bugging him for weeks and months on end, he finally came to me and said, "Would you consider competing in powerlifting?" And I thought, I don't know. Shouldn't my name be Elga? And shouldn't I be Bulgarian? I didn't know anything about it. And then he said, "Okay, clearly you know nothing about the sport. Let me tell you more about it." And then one day he came to the gym and he brought a powerlifting magazine. And he points to the cover and he said, "If you are looking for a hero and someone to emulate, you need to be like this lady. Look her up, find her, meet her, and you won't be sorry for it." And it was Suzanne Hartwig-Gary on the cover. I read the whole magazine right away. I went online and researched her, and then I stalked her on Facebook. Friend requested her. Yes. See, she may not remember this part, but I did stalk her like crazy. She's like, "How do you know my blood type?" But I did all this research, and this goes to show how kind she is because she accepted my friend request. she allowed a crazy person into her life. And then about a few months later, I was in a powerlifting competition, and I had just had a hiccup in the squat. And she kindly approached me and said, "Would you be willing to hear some feedback about your squat?" And I was starstruck. I thought, oh my goodness, it's really her. She's talking to me. Don't faint, play it cool. So I was like, yeah, sure. No, actually, I would love anything you have to say. And it was brilliant. And then sometime later, I did some coaching with her. I learned a ton. And then after that, forced her to be my friend. And the rest is history. So
My shoulder still hurts from that.
oh, sorry. But thank you so much for that. It was incredible. And he was totally right. Looking for a hero. This is someone, if you're looking for a hero, Sioux-z is the answer. And I grew up being a huge fan of Cal Ripken Jr. He was my childhood hero, and my super twin was my hero. But outside of that, as an adult, I didn't have that. So it was really cool finding a new hero, but even better, meeting my hero and then being just super excited that she surpassed all expectations. Now she's probably rolling her eyes.
Yeah.
You're like, stop it. She's very humble. It's a good thing, because with all of your accomplishments, I don't know how you fit your head through the door. Actually, speaking of accomplishments, I just want to quickly glance over a list here that Sioux-z has been doing competitive lifting for 35 years. She's done 33 international competitions. She's an 8-time world champion. Seriously, the GOAT, Tom Brady, has nothing on you. You are a 2-times World Games competitor, 33-time national champion, world record holder in multiple classes, Brother Bennett Award recipient. You've won all kinds of competitions, national team head coach, assistant coach for World Games, World Championships, the Arnold. How's my Arnold impression? The Arnold Sports.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Thank you. And just the list goes on and on. That just kind of gives you a quick glimpse into her greatness. So now that we've gone over that, Sioux-z, can you share with us how you got started in lifting and eventually competing in powerlifting?
So it's kind of a funny story. I think I was in 7th grade and I was at my friend's house in the basement. We were hanging out and a bunch of the guys were trying to pick up a bar that had some weights on it on the floor, and no one could do it. So we were teasing them, of course. And I was such a tomboy that one of the guys said to me, "All right, smarty pants, why don't you lift it up?" Well, I figured I probably couldn't, but I had to try. And I walked over and I lifted it up. It was maybe 120 pounds, something like that. I weighed about 86 pounds, I think, at the time. Maybe a little bit less. But so that was really cool. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. I want to be strong. And so I asked my mom for a weight set for Christmas. And she bought me 3-pound dumbbells, which made me so sad because I wanted to be big and strong. And I probably would sit and watch TV and for an hour straight do stuff with those little dumbbells, so I felt like I was doing something. And then flash forward my freshman year in high school, our track coach decided to take us in the gym one day and show us the squat and the bench. And we tried it on Monday, we tried it on Wednesday, and then Friday they tested our strength. And I weighed 98 pounds. I squatted 200 and I benched 100. And I went, ooh, this is good, because if the guys could do triple body weight adding their squat and their bench together, they got their name painted on the gym wall. And I'm like, I want my name up on the wall. And they're like, well, we don't have it for girls yet. And I'm like, well, I want to start training. But it was a small school with a really small gym. And they pretty much said, this is for the football players and the wrestlers. We were just seeing who might be good at shot put, or they were figuring out our strengths. So that made me sad, but I knew, gosh, I'm strong. I want to do something with this. And flash forward about 4 years, I'm working at Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. And we had a universal machine in the basement. And some of the guys were training. And I was like, hey, can I work out with you? They're like, sure. So I was working out and this guy goes, you're strong. You should be a power lifter. I was like, really? Cool. What's that? And he told me what it was. And then I went back for my last year of college. And in my last semester, I finally found the intramural powerlifting club. And I talked with a few people. I trained for 6 weeks. And then over the next 4 weeks, I did 3 championships. And my total in the last one was 90 pounds less than the girl who won the nationals at the WDFPF drug-free nationals. And I was like, wow, I think I finally found what God built me for. Like the reason I had the huge legs and couldn't fit into jeans back in the 80s and stuff like that. So I just fell in love with it. And I said, you know what? I need to follow this. And I actually did a little bit more for the following year in South Dakota, but there just wasn't much going on in South Dakota, and there weren't many other females competing there. So I ended up moving away just so I could lift weights.
That's incredible. And I don't think people fully appreciate the numbers that you mentioned. When you said you first started, you were under 100 pounds and you were lifting more than your body weight. That's incredible. I know as a personal trainer, when I would work with athletes that were playing varsity in high school or even scholarships for college, a lot of times, especially in the first 6 months, they weren't even making it to their body weight in a lift. So that's amazing. And then to be 90 pounds off from a nationally ranked lifter is insane.
And one thing that was really neat, I was competing equipped, and I remember, there's a lot of young, strong people now. There's better training, better nutrition. People take care of their bodies better than they used to, all these things. And throughout time, everyone's getting bigger, faster, and stronger. But back in the time, for a woman to bench her body weight was, not something easily done. I had a girl come up to me at a nationals, and she even had a bench shirt, and she's like, how many years did it take you to be able to bench your body weight? And I was like, I'm not a good example. And she's like, why? And I said, well, it took me 5 days. So, because they taught me on Monday and Friday, I benched 100 and weighed 98 pounds. So it was just the way I was built and what I was meant to be. And I did build grain bins with my dad. I was a cheerleader, so I jumped all the time. I was a catcher in softball, so I was squatting frequently. But God also built me short and more stocky, more muscular. So it was just basketball I loved, but I was never going to be a great basketball player when I'm not even 5 foot tall. So it was finding the sport, and you're right, I was just blessed with the genetics, and then to get better, I had to add in hard work.
Wow. Well, it definitely sounds like there's a genetics component. And after training thousands of athletes, there were athletes that genetically were gifted who still didn't do as well because they didn't put in the hard work. So you clearly put in the hard work, disciplined. You also have one of the most brilliant minds I've ever known. You're such a strategist. Everything
you need to get out there more.
See, I said she's humble. Seriously, your strategy for everything is impressive. You treat everything like it's a chess match, whether it's playing a board game, competing in powerlifting, or solving a technical issue. We were talking about stuff earlier. You are a really good problem solver, and I can see that it helps you with lifting. And I know that because of your example coming before me, it gave me the strength and the hope to think, oh, I can do more, because I didn't know anyone lifting the weights that I wanted to lift. And I remember one time someone saying, I think you can deadlift this amount of weight. And I said, you think so? You think my bones will hold that? But then when I heard about the numbers that you had and what you were doing, it wasn't what you were doing, but I thought, well, it hasn't crushed her, and this is like half that, so I could probably do it. You were such a great example to me and countless other ladies especially.
Thank you. And I think, way back when I started, and I'd tell people, well, I'm petite but stocky. And they'd say, I pictured like a little ghoul or something. And how can you be petite but stocky? And I'm like, well, under 5 foot tall. At the time, my waist was 23 inches and my legs were 22 inches each. So I was petite, but I wasn't skinny. And I think people like you thought if you're going to be a power lifter and you're a woman, you're going to look like a man. And so I think it was especially good that when I would eventually get in the magazines and stuff, people would see you can look like a female and still be really strong, because a lot of people were afraid if they lift weights, they'd start to look like a man.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many different body types. Even within one weight class, the 114-pound weight class, you could see a dozen ladies, and they were all different heights, and some had longer torsos, other longer legs. So it's really cool that the sport can have a variety. I'm sure there's certain sizes that have a more mechanical advantage, but I feel like to be great and to get to your level, it was the strength of mind and character that kept you going.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I think the big thing is, when people sometimes are genetically gifted, they can skate by and not try too hard, and they can still they can do things the wrong way. They can always think, I've done it this way, I'm never going to change, because they've won in the past. And in the beginning, people could do that a lot. But over the past 10 years, powerlifting's become a lot more popular, especially since it went to what they call classic raw, where you don't wear any special equipment. Now you have crossover athletes from a lot of other sports, and you can't just be genetically gifted, because you get the ones that are super genetically gifted and kind of skate by, and then you take someone like me who was genetically gifted but knew I wasn't the best genetics, and I had to work really hard also. So you get the people that have the pretty good genetics and work really hard, and they beat the ones with the best genetics, because they're willing to listen to other people and realize that sometimes there might be a better way to do things. And you need to be open-minded if you want to become better or the best, because even if what you're doing has worked for many years, sometimes you need to try something else to spark to continue to get stronger. It doesn't mean you can't do the same thing for 3, 4, 5 years, and you may continue to get better. But then if you hit a plateau, sometimes it means you just need to change things up and have an open mind. And sometimes you try something, it doesn't work, so you put it to the side. But if you never try something new, if you always think your way is the best way, then it's actually going to hold you back.
That's well said. I love that you're open-minded, especially with your list of accomplishments. You could lean in the direction of being closed-minded, but I do think that's also what led to your greatness. I know one thing I was thinking about was with your personality is you have the grab the bull by the horns personality. Where did you get that? And you never sit on your hands and wait for things to happen. Where did that mentality come from?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think you're born with some of it, just, but the other, I had to work on it, because I'll be honest, like, I loved dancing. And again, I was such a tomboy, and I was friends with all the guys. So I'd go to a high school dance, and I wanted to dance, but no one was ever asking me. And I would sit there, and I'd sit there on my hands, like you were saying, actually don't do. And I'd sit there, and then I'd go, it's almost 11 o'clock, and the dance stops at 12. All right, I'm not waiting anymore. And I would go, and I would ask until someone said yes. And it didn't matter to me if 10 people said no. If I was running out of guys, I'd find a friend, and I'd just grab his arm and say, you're dancing with me. I wouldn't give him the option. So there were times where I'd kind of sit back at first and wait for things to happen. But then if a time came where I'm like, this isn't going to happen at all unless I take control, then I would just take control. And I think part of it then, as I got older, I just found it was easy, and I understood so many times people feel uncomfortable in situations where, let's say, you don't hardly know anyone. So I went to this youth leadership seminar where one child from each school went, and there were like 120 of us. So I recognized a couple people from sports, but most of the time I didn't recognize a single face. And I'm walking through the hall feeling really weird, thinking I don't know anyone. And I'm looking and I'm seeing everybody else has the same look on their face. So I decided to use a little humor. And I was just like, next person went by, I said, "Hey, how you doing? It's really awkward, isn't it? Not knowing anyone. It's really strange and you feel weird." And she's like, "Yeah." And I go, "Why don't we be friends and walk to class together?" So we were walking to class and I'd see someone else walking kind of by themselves and I'd say, "Hey, you want to join us? It's really weird not knowing anyone, isn't it?" And then I'd get about 5 of us together. We'd go sit for one of the classes. And then when we were leaving, I'd see someone else by themselves and I'd start over again. And I'd get like 5 more people together. And over a 3-day weekend, I'd probably put together 10 groups of people that ended up being friends. And it was all because I felt awkward and I found it was just easier to go out there and admit it. This is awkward. Let's do it. So if I really want to do something and it's not happening, then I grab the bull by the horns. And as I've gotten older and I'm now in the sport more and stuff, it's easier and easier. But I think it just kind of built up from that feeling like I was missing out and didn't want to. So I had to take control, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. I love that about you. You're such a people magnet. And some of my favorite memories with you are the times where we would have all the lifting ladies get together, like Pat, Brooke, Mona, and Allie, so many others, and we would all work out together. But you were always the glue. You were the thing that attracted every single person into the group. You know how they say there's 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon? Have you heard that? Like somehow there's a way that people have some sort of connection to Kevin Bacon. Well, if you looked at all these groups of friends, especially in the lifting community, we all had in common that we loved being around you, and you brought us kind of all together. So if we were a wheel, you were like the center of the wheel, and we were all the spokes. So it's cool that that skill you had as a kid, a young adult, and then you've carried that over, and it's been such a blessing. I love that. You taught me a lot about lifting, but I have learned so many life skills. I'm constantly copying you. Well, if you see good stuff, if it's bad stuff, that's not from you. Just so you know.
That's probably me too.
It could be. It could be. Naughty pants.
Yep.
I love that you're a great example too to my daughter. It's so important now having a daughter. I keep thinking I want her to have a good role model. The poor thing has a crazy mom like me. She needs somebody else to kind of help her. So I love that she does watch you compete. We can stream your competition. She can watch that. But then there's a lot of life skills that I've watched with you that I've started copying. And then I feel like she's learning that. So when she started her running club recently, we did that same thing where it's grab the bull by the horns, and we had her introduce herself to all the kids. No other toddler was doing that, but I feel like she wouldn't be doing that had it not been for your example. So thank you. I love that you do it.
And don't sell yourself short, because she is super blessed to have you and Matt for parents. You go out there, you have taught her not to be afraid of doing things. You've made exercise and being active fun. And nowadays, sadly, so many kids just sit on the phone, on the iPad, or watching TV. I mean, I grew up watching more TV than I should. However, I spent most of my days playing in some way, shape, or form, some sort of sport or hide and seek or just hanging out with friends. That's what we do. And nowadays, it's not nearly as much. So seeing all the things and you giving her the choice, not making her do them. She wants to do the fun things that mom and dad are doing. They want to mimic. And luckily, what you all are doing is healthy and good. So she's mimicking really good things. So don't sell yourself short.
Oh, thank you. Well, and they say that the example of the parents and family is really crucial, but it's also so good that she sees it outside of the home. So I do love that she can see that in you. And I've definitely tried copying those behaviors. You mentioned earlier moving across the country, going from South Dakota to, was it Virginia first?
Yes.
Okay. And what gave you the courage to move across the country? That's a big deal. You're really young, by yourself. And what prepared you for that?
I don't know if anything particularly prepared me other than the fact that I had realized when I'm in uncomfortable situations and I don't know anyone, it's up to me to make sure I get to know somebody. And to me, it wasn't an option. I wanted to do powerlifting. I wanted to win the nationals the next year. That was my goal. And the only way I could do that would be to be around other powerlifters. And I researched, and there were some powerlifting in like the California area and the Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland area. And the year before, I was going to go out to that area to be a nanny. And so I was doing some research. I couldn't find anything. And I remembered 1-800-BE-A-NANNY. And it was in
made up.
Virginia. Exactly. And it was in Virginia. I could have ended up in California, but I couldn't find any research. This is back before you could really go on the internet. You had to be going through little index cards, finding jobs and stuff. And so I said, okay, I got to move to Virginia because I want to lift weights and I want to be really good at it. So I became a nanny. I thought it would be for like 2 years. Turns out my second nanny job, they wouldn't let me quit. And I also didn't realize I'd do as well and meet so many other people in powerlifting that I loved. And then I stayed in the sport. So I ended up being there for, 20 some years in Maryland before I moved to Montana. But it was just the desire that I wanted to be the best powerlifter I could. I wanted to win nationals, and I felt like there was no choice but to go. And I'll be honest, the first 3 months, because when you're a nanny, you've got the little kids you're taking care of. It's not like you're at a job where you meet a bunch of people at work. And I went to the gym, and I met a few people that were kind of friendly, but it was a more higher class, really expensive gym that I got for free as a nanny. So they weren't really my kind of people. But every day I went to the bakery that was a couple blocks away when I had my 3-hour block of time off in the middle of the day. And the bakery boys became my friends. I'd see the same people. I'd say hi to them. I'd see the grocery clerks every day. And they became my adult interaction, even though they weren't like really good friends. But they actually all invited me to go with them and their girlfriends for our 4th of July event when I'd been there like 2 months because they knew I didn't know anyone. So that was really sweet. But the first few months were super hard because I didn't really know anyone or have any friends. But I just knew it would get better. And the best things in life you have to work hard for and persevere. So it actually made it that much sweeter when I started to then compete and meet powerlifting friends and do things like that.
Wow. Did you mean to say sweeter? The bakery, the sweeter?
You know I'm a chocoholic. Come on, Joe.
That's interesting. Wow. After knowing you all these years, I actually had no idea about the bakery story.
Yeah.
That's incredible and very encouraging with moving from Maryland to North Carolina, and it's been hard and not knowing people and then raising a little one. That is such a blessing. There is a component of isolation, so it makes your story even more inspiring. I'm really impressed that you stuck with it. That's incredible. Now, with your competitive spirit, I feel like you're the most competitive person I've ever met. And you're
Could be.
You're really a fun, competitive person. But
Oh, good. Thank you.
yes, it's the best kind, the best kind. What made you so competitive?
I was born that way. God made me that way. I was a tomboy. I wanted to do the things better than the boys. I was supposed to be born a boy, and I wasn't. So my older brother treated me like a little brother, and he's like, well, I need to practice playing poker and pinochle and card games and stuff. So he taught me how to do those things. And I have a very analytical mind of how to do things. And so, like, when I was playing Monopoly, I figured out that when you land on something, even if it's the worst property on the board, you buy it if you have the money. Because I didn't know at the time what monopoly meant.
Right.
I do now. Then I didn't understand it. I simply knew that if I bought it, someone else couldn't. So I just really strategized. And when I played the game Clue, where you had to figure out where someone was going to be, I had special strategies of how I could figure out things. And it was just the way that my mind kind of worked. And I think it was just a way to drive myself, but also who doesn't like to win? So, but being competitive, whether I win or lose, like I just competed at the World Championships and I placed second for the first time in the Masters. I've won in years past, but I went into it knowing because I'd went up a weight class, I might not be as competitive. I probably wouldn't win. So instead, I was like, okay, I want to be able to do this much in the bench. I want to break the world record in the squat, even though I may not win overall.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a way, I think, of pushing yourself to be better also.
Mm-hmm.
But you can be competitive even if you know you're not going to win, because you can compete against yourself. And I'm not competing against Sioux-z when she was 50 and really strong. I'm competing against Sioux-z now when she's 55, 56, because you have to be realistic or you're always going to be let down.
Mm-hmm. That's so impressive that you always tried to compete at the highest level. You could compete in federations that are easier and easily, without batting an eye, win first place. You've won competitions at the highest level with the most prestigious organizations. And I do love that you'll go into a competition. There have been a number of times where maybe you were recovering from an injury or you had stuff going on in your personal life that you still competed in the midst of that, which is mind-boggling. I know for me with competing, I really struggled competing while dealing with personal issues, with illness in the family or injury, whatever it might be. But I saw you still compete at the highest level and win with that, and then saw you maybe not place as well as you wanted, still unbelievably impressive. But it might not have been your goal, but you still went into it with a competitive spirit, joyful, you weren't hard on yourself. That's incredible. How is it that you are willing to always go for the hardest one, even if it means you might not get first? Or how do you still compete even when there's a lot going on in your personal life?
Well, to the first part, when I first started, I actually competed in the ADFPA because I did some research, and at the time there was ADFPA and USPF. The USPF went to the IPF at that time, the International Federation. And I was a beginner, and I said, okay, I'm a beginner. This is like the semi-pros, so I'm going to start in the semi-pros. So I went to ADFPA, and I won. But then I went to the World Championships, and there were so few lifters in that organization that I felt like if you won nationals, you were going to win worlds, and it wasn't going to push me because I was actually injured and lost a bunch of weight and was feeling sick, and I still won the WDFPF World Championships because the hardest competition for me had been in the U.S., but there weren't many countries that participated in the other one. And so I wanted to be pushed, so I switched to the USPF, knowing that it would take me years to be a national champion again, but I wanted to be the best of the best. Some people want to be the big fish in the little pond. So they feel important and they're always the best. And I feel like if you want to be your best, you have to surround yourself with people that are better. Because if you only surround yourself with people that you're already better than, then that's just trying to make yourself feel better, right? But if you're the little fish in the big pond and you can swim your way up, then that's more exciting. That's a way to push yourself. And I don't want to just show up somewhere and compete because I know I can win. I want to show up and I want to have to push myself. And there'll be sometimes when I first became a master too, and I was quite healthy. I hurt my hamstring about 2.5 months before, and so I pulled things back, but I was still like at the top of my game where I was still competing in the open championships, which is against all ages, but now I was competing against people between 50 and 60. And so I didn't look at the numbers they were doing and just try to win. I tried to hit what I wanted to do to make myself better, like to hit a personal best in the bench and things like that. So that's the competition side of like wanting to push and be better and be competitive. And then I have to admit, the second part of your question now, I forgot. There was 2 parts that were a little different.
Let's see, what was that other part? There's so many things. I did ask kind of a long question.
Oh, competing when you're injured too, you mentioned. And when things are going on in your family life. So what I did, my mom battled cancer for about 3.5 years. It was actually lymphoma. And in her last year, I was flying back and forth from South Dakota and Maryland and seeing her a lot. And I had a national championship, and she wasn't doing too well, but she was super supportive of my lifting. There was nothing I could do at the time. We didn't know how much time Mom had, so dropping out didn't make sense. But I knew if I got a call, even if it was the day before I was supposed to compete, I would get on a plane and leave. So I was at nationals. I finished competing, and I got a call that Mom wasn't doing as well, that I should come pretty soon. So I coached my husband the next day, and then I flew straight home to South Dakota to be with my mom. And I had the Master World Championships coming up about a month and a half later or something like that. But I decided I was going to stay in South Dakota because we knew it was getting toward the end. And what I did, I used to train 4 days a week. Instead, I trained 2 days a week. And I would go to the gym maybe for 4 hours, but I used the gym as my outlet for just a little bit of time for me and to get away from the sadness and the sorrow. And my family and everyone understood, because you can't sit at someone's bedside 24 hours a day when you don't know if they have a day or if they have a month. So it was kind of my outlet, my release for me for just a short amount of time. And it gave my mind something to focus on other than the fact that I was losing my mom. So I went in, I trained, I figured I'd do the best that I can, and we'll just see where the cards fall. And I lost my mom about 2.5 weeks after that. And then I competed about 6 weeks after she had passed away. And my dad and my brother came to the competition. And I say that my mom was there helping me lift the weights because I had a neck injury in the end of 2003, a bulging disc, and I had to not do shrugs and all sorts of things. I couldn't even bench press at all. And a lot of the things that I used to do that was make my deadlift really well, I couldn't because it would irritate the nerve problem again. So it had been from 2003 to 2012, I had gotten back to the strength, but I'd never surpassed my strength. And at that competition, about 5 or 6 weeks after my mom passed, It was a 9-second long deadlift that I finished and finally got a lifetime personal best. But I went into the competition like my mom supported me, loved me, would want me to do this, and I'm going to do this in her honor. And I went 9 for 9. I hit a PB. It was amazing.
Personal best, not peanut butter.
Yeah, personal best. But so I understand where with some people it could be too hard to go because they feel like going in the gym is another thing they have to do, that it's work, that I've got to do this because I've got to compete. And I looked at it as this is an outlet for me away from my sadness for a short time, something my mom supported. And I looked at it as a release instead of something I had to do. And I think some people think, well, I signed up for the competition, I have to train. And it's another responsibility when they're already stressed. So it's hard for them to do, and they go in and it probably doesn't go so well. Where I looked at it as a blessing, as a respite from what I was going through. So I actually really looked forward to getting in there, even though it was only twice a week instead of 4 times a week. And I think how you look at things and how you frame things makes a huge difference in how life happens and how things go. I mean, and you've heard it said many times, take lemons and make lemonade. You can't control what happens to you in life, but you can control how you respond. And you can be sad, and you can be sad all the time, or you can step back and say, you know what? I'm super sad of what's going through with my mom and that I lost her. But I also know she would want me to move on and do some of the things I enjoy. And sometimes we need to step back and look and think, if you're losing someone, what would they want for you?
Wow. I love that. That was such a great example to me. I'm so sorry you went through that. And I remember when you shared about it on social media, and it was really inspiring how you handled it. It was such a godly response. And then that helped me right around the time that you lost your mom. My super twin was diagnosed. So then I was copying you again, trying to be the same. It took me a while, though, to be able to compete in the midst of that. I did struggle, but years later it helped. And after my twin went to heaven, I did compete in a strong woman competition a year after. And I feel like your example.
And dominated.
Oh, you were such a big help. And then actually there was a competition where a bunch of people had backed out in my weight class, and they moved me up to the next weight class. And I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? And I thought of your example and what would Susie do? So WWSD, and that helped me to compete, even though I knew I was competing at a higher weight class, because I was at the lightest weight of my weight class, competing then in a weight class that was above, and those ladies were at the upper tier, almost 2 weight classes above me. But you were such a huge help.
Oh, well, I'm happy to hear that. And you did wonderful. And you couldn't control that. In my opinion, they should have just had only your weight class then. And even if there were only 2 of you, it was ridiculous that they moved you up. But you can look at it and say, okay, I was going to work hard to win my class, or I put in all this hard work, excuse my language, but screw them. I'm coming anyway, and I'm going to compete against myself,
Yes.
And so I was really proud of you, and you did really well.
Oh, thank you. It was so nice having you there, especially when I did the axle deadlift and you were next to me. It felt like you were helping me lift that weight up. Because
I was trying.
Yeah, you did great. They were like, Susie, get your hands off the bar. Yeah. It was amazing. Wow, such a testimony. And I liked how you said, basically kind of stay in your lane. You're competing against yourself. And even yourself today could be different from a month from now or 2 years from now. That's a great example. And I know one thing I wanted to find out more about and have you share is, how did you become so disciplined in your training? You are really disciplined, consistent, organized. How did that all come about?
I think I've always been just an organizer, someone who likes to organize things and have a plan, because if you fail to plan, you might as well plan to fail, kind of thing. I almost went in the military. I did ROTC for 3 years. So I studied engineering for a while. I was in college. There were so many things where it was like, if I didn't organize things, then life was going to be really crazy. The drive and the desire to do well, it was kind of, and it was a discipline, but I loved going to the gym. Part of it was, as you said, I'm a people person. And even though when I was lifting, it was serious, I could be chatting when I was doing assistance work afterwards. It was kind of like getting together with my friends. So it was easy to be disciplined because I always looked forward to going to the gym, training and seeing my friends. I wanted to get stronger and I wanted to hang out. So that made it pretty easy. And then I guess maybe it's the German in me. It's certainly my dad. But I haven't had the discipline as much the past couple of years with moving, lots of travel, going through menopause. They're not excuses. They're just reasons. And I think also could be a little burnout of 30 years of being disciplined. But so my eating habits went downhill, and we have a studio gym, and it's usually just my husband and I, but he was writing the game day coaching manual, so we were training at different times. So I was still training because I had a competition coming up. So if you have a competition, it doesn't matter if you're tired, you go, you train, you do the work. So I kind of make sure I have a competition coming up, just so on those days when I don't want to go in, it's like, you have to go in. You want to compete, you need to put in the work. It wasn't hard for me. Like I said, the first 25 or 30 years, I almost always wanted to be going to the gym. And as far as eating, it was like, well, this is my weight class. I would let myself eat more like regular people would eat. But then I'd be like 3 months from a competition and I'd say, okay, I need to start eating less chocolate, eating less bread. The good thing is I liked healthy foods overall anyway. I didn't like a lot of fried foods and things like that. I liked chicken. I liked turkey burger, all of that, fruits, vegetables. But that's something I'm actually struggling with a little now that I'm working on, is the discipline of training, trying to set up regular times to train, because now, again, we have our own gym and it's right outside our door. So because we can train at any time, sometimes instead of getting in at 10 in the morning or 1 o'clock, it ends up 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock because you get sidetracked by life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that ever happens to you, because I know you have your own gym too, or if you have a set time that you train.
You know what? That used to happen. I think now, becoming a parent and having so much more to do, I'm actually way more scheduled and disciplined. I feel like I used to piddle around for an hour before I'd get started. It would take a little bit, or the times would change. But now I know my window of opportunity is so much smaller. So I'm actually a lot better. But I learned a lot from you about consistency with training and being disciplined. When I trained years ago, I would the days would kind of move around. I didn't follow a particular program, that kind of thing. But I noticed that you were always training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. You had your lifting program set. You were cycling different programs, 8 to 12 week programs, very organized. And you were really disciplined about, this is what I'm going to do today. But then you would also self-regulate. If you weren't feeling as good, you were really good about listening to your body and not doing too much. And whereas I would do Russian training programs like Smolov, if anyone's ever looked into that, it is redundant. Don't do it. Yeah. I feel like one time Mona and I were talking with you and you were asking us about training and we said, well, we're doing Smolov squat program and Smolov bench and we're doing this other thing. And you were like, well, one, you should be doing one of those things, not multiple Smolov programs for multiple lifts. Two, those people were on steroids and different things. I think that's what you said at the time. You just said it was insane.
Some of them were. I did Smolov Jr. for the squat and Smolov Jr. for the bench. And I did notice that it worked really well. But it also caused a little bit of aches and pains that I hadn't had before because you push yourself so hard. And also, anyone out there, if you do want to do a Smolov, start with Smolov Jr. And if you're only squatting 1 day a week, don't start with the Smolov where it's 5-6 days a week.
Yes.
Go to 2 days a week for a while, then 3. Go into it in a smart way. Because I saw people that squatted 1 day a week and then start the Smolov and just ended up hurt and injured.
That would be me.
But yeah, I mean, it's a great challenge, but yeah, you don't want to do 2 at a time and something else.
And you were really good about your training. You've mentioned in the past working with Kirk how you would try to go up gradually with your lifts. I feel like I could get a little too greedy and then I might miss a lift or get injured. So you showed a lot of discipline in putting in the time and being patient. I feel like you're an incredibly patient lifter and person. You deal with me.
I look back and I think, in the first couple of years, I made huge gains. I didn't have hardly anyone helping me. I didn't have any rules. And anybody who's a new lifter, you walk in the gym, you look at weights, you get stronger. I mean, it just happens. It's like, oh, I'm in the gym, 5 more pounds today. It's incredible. But so in reality, I think I may have been held back a little in my year like 2, 3, and 4 by doing it that way. Because I was training with someone like Kirk who'd been lifting a lot longer. So that incremental 2.5 kilo personal best at each competition, that was doing really, really well. So I think in some ways I was held back a little bit, but I think it was a blessing because I slowly built my strength, my joints, my ligaments, everything got used to it. I think a lot of people nowadays push too hard, too fast. They do get the strength, but how many shooting stars have we had? In the powerlifting world, someone comes out of nowhere. You haven't even heard of them. They're number 1, and then 3 years later, you have no idea where they are. And it's often one of 2 things that have happened, or 3. Someone came along stronger, and they couldn't handle someone being stronger and losing because they were always winning. That's 1. Number 2, which is, I think, very common, is they're young, they can get through all these things, but then it catches up to them that they keep pushing through the injuries and never take care of them. So they get injured and they don't come back. And then the third thing is real life starts to happen because you have a lot of 17, 18, 19-year-olds, and suddenly they're out of college. They've maybe gotten married or had a kid or have a job where they have to work 40 hours or 50 hours a week now, and it's harder to stay in the powerlifting. So I admire people who are super disciplined and super focused and push and get that strength, but I caution for pushing too hard, too fast. Even if you give yourself 3 years instead of a year to do what you want to do, or I remember saying, one day I want to squat 400 pounds. That was equipped. One day. And that's when I was squatting 3. I didn't expect to do it immediately, but I figured if I did 3 and then by the end of the year it was 315 and 3, I'd eventually get there. And it took a long time, but I did eventually get there. And then you and Pat bought me 402 miniature Nutellas.
Yes. That was awesome. That was an incredible lift. Actually, that was something I didn't mention with your accomplishments, your lifts. Could you quickly share your best raw squat, bench, and deadlift?
So my best raw squat was in 2017 in Belarus, 156.5 kilos, which is 345 pounds. A long time ago, I benched much more in the gym, but not in competition. Then after I had my neck injury that messed with my tricep extension, the best that I did was 82.5, which would be about 180. Shoot, I should know this, but it's a number I don't do right now. What's 82.5 kilos? Sorry, folks, I'm going to have to look it up because I should know that. I'm ashamed of myself, but I'll never hear the end of it from my husband. It's 182 pounds or 181 point something.
Which is
so
amazing.
Recently, though, when I was 50, I did 81 kilos. So that's my recent PB, 180 pounds. And then in the deadlift, my best was 363. 363? Or it was a little bit more. 163 kilos. No, it wasn't quite 363.
Thanks,
Matt.
For
it was funny because it was 360 on the nose. It was supposed to be 363 that day because I was supposed to do more, but my second one felt funny, and I was like, well, let's just chip the record. And then I pulled it, and I pulled it easily, and I walked off, and Matt's like, you had 363. That's why that number's always in my head. But so that was pretty good. I weighed 114 at the time when I did it. So 345 squat, 181 bench, and 360 deadlift.
That is
just with a
unbelievable.
belt. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing those numbers. That's incredible. I know another big thing that I think is really amazing about you is how you handle pressure. You handle game day pressure extremely well. I think we talked about how some people, they do better on competition days. They get the adrenaline, and others do better in training. I have to say, I did struggle with putting pressure on myself on game day, and I always admired how calm and collected you were, but super excited. I remember you had the meet at your gym at SSPT, and I remember you being so bubbly and energetic, and you ran up to us, and there was a bunch of ladies in the room, and you said, "Are you guys excited for today?" And everyone looked like they were going to throw up. And
Yep.
I was just like, yes, Susie, I'm so excited. I mean, I was,
Yeah.
but I also did have the nerves. And then I remember you saying, remember, if you feel nervous, it's energy, and it's just excited energy. You were trying to help us reframe that. Can you share more about how you handle game day pressure and how you don't put pressure on yourself?
So first I'm going to explain something that I probably talk to at least one person at every single competition that I go to. Pretty much what I said to you all, but I'll say to people, so are you feeling nervous? Because they are. You can see it in their faces. Is this your first World Championships or is this your first Nationals? And they're like, yeah. And I said, okay, I'm going to tell you a secret. Your body physiologically responds the same. If I just tell you won $1 million, if I just pull a gun out and I threaten your life, if you're nervous because you're going to compete, if you're excited because you just had a new beautiful baby, all your body physiologically goes through the same things. So I'll tell them, you can say, I'm nervous, like it's a bad thing. Or you can say, I'm nervous, it's adrenaline, bring it on. It'll make me faster. It'll make me stronger. Embrace it. Own it. Know that you are nervous, but that's okay. And if you say, I'm nervous, but I can use this to make me stronger, then it's easier than going out going, I'm so nervous. It doesn't take the nerves away, but you embrace it instead of trying to avoid it. And it's so funny because I've had a lot of people come back to me and say, I just said in my head, I'm really nervous, but Susie said it'll make me stronger. And they'll come back and they'll be like, wow, it was so much easier going in instead of being afraid of being nervous, saying, bring it on. So that's kind of the thing. If you accept it and say, bring it on, and I will get adrenaline because I'm not nervous before my first squat, but my body's getting ready for fight or flight. So when I start to feel that, instead of going, what's going on? I'm like, yep, this is normal. Body's getting ready to fight. Let's go to war. Come on, it's me or the weights, and who's going to win? It's going to be me. And but I love to compete. So I'm like, I've looked forward to this day. I'm not going to go out there and worry about it. And I'm not going to go out. My coach is not going to put something on the bar. My husband, Matt Gary, my coach's not going to put something on the bar he doesn't believe I can do. So I believe I can do it. He believes I can do it. The first one will be the hardest, and they'll get a little easier after that, because your body does get adrenaline and a little bit of nerves. So I think the number one thing is just embracing it. And people, again, are wired differently. I remember in college getting ready for a dance concert. Some of the people were nervous for a whole week beforehand as we were doing final preps. Some, it was like a day or two where they were just like nervous and couldn't sleep. Me, I was fine until we were standing on the stage and the lights went out. And then my heart would race. But I knew once I got past the first 4 or 5 steps that I'd just be into what I was doing and it would be fine. But it would hit me like a ton of bricks right before it started, where other people would be nervous for days or weeks. So part of it's your wiring, but you can retrain yourself. And like I said, a lot of it's just accepting that, yes, it's okay to be nervous if you use it instead of fear it.
That's awesome. And I also think another thing with your consistency, with your training, you practice like you play. You make your training mimic the competition day. And that was something I noticed, where I would train, but I would be by myself and it wasn't around as many people. So then on game day, there's all these people. I wasn't ready, or I wasn't used to the venue. I'm used to training in this one place. But I feel like you and Matt, when you go to a competition, don't you walk out onto the platform? So it's not like when you go to do your first squat, this is the first time I've been here. I don't know what this room looks like, or I don't know how the platform feels. So you're really good about that.
We always try to take all of our lifters out on the platform before the lifting starts, just so they can get a lay of the land. And like you said, so it's not a shock. Matt even did that with someone at the Sheffield, which is a huge powerlifting championship that's put on once a year now by SBD. And there were about 2,300 people in the audience with loud music and fluorescent lights as you first walk out. If you haven't looked out when you're used to just being in a small area with a few people, maybe a couple hundred people watching you lift, it could be like a shock. But even if the people aren't there, but you walk out and you look and you go, oh, wow, these over 2,000 seats are going to be full, then it's not quite a shock.
And you're also prepared with your lifts. You never do a lift that you haven't done before. You go in feeling confident. You have your game day plan, and that's something I want to ask you about. But I never went into a competition with a game day plan until I met you and Matt.
So 2 things. I actually do attempt weights I've never, ever done before when I compete, because I typically only work up to a second attempt in the gym. Because I know that the adrenaline and the peak are going to be higher except for in the bench. It's a different animal, being the upper body and holding the heavy weight in your hands. But if I were to try to squat exactly what I was going to squat, I might get it in the gym, but it might fatigue me enough that then the next week at the meet I wouldn't get it. But the first attempt and the second attempt I have done, and I've done successfully multiple times in the gym. So for some people work up to what they're going to do for their third attempts. I just found that it works better for me to be, if I'm peaking, to peak at the meet and not actually touch that weight in the squat or the deadlift, using the adrenaline and everything. But a game plan is really important. You put out, this is what, if everything goes great, these are the attempts I'm going to take. But then you always have like a and a B. the first one felt a little harder than it should have, so I'm going to go with the lesser weight. Too many people have the numbers written down, and that's just what they go for, and then they miss a lot of lifts. But it's important to have a plan, because if you have no idea and, oh, it felt good, and the person next to you, or you're like, okay, go up this much, when really, you can take bigger jumps from your first to your second than your second to third, usually. But it's very important to have a game plan, but to know that it's only a plan. If you're feeling ridiculously strong that day, you might do 5 pounds more. If you're feeling like something's a little bit off, you might do 5 pounds less, as opposed to trying it and missing, and you end up with a whole lot less.
Definitely. I know if I could go back in time and do things over, I wish I had done more coaching or training with you as my coach, but also game day coaching with you and with Matt. I know I did that a little bit, and those were my most successful meets, where I was consistent, 9 for 9. I felt the most relaxed and joyful when I had you overseeing me. Can you share a little bit more about what you and Matt do as coaches? Obviously, you're an unbelievable competitor, but you're also an unbelievable coach. Can you share some about that?
Thank you. So Matt and I have both been blessed to be the head coach for the U.S. national teams. And Matt's currently actually head coach for the GB Open National Team. But I think the difference between our game day coaching and some people who coach or help on game day, so there's game day handlers.
Mm-hmm.
Handlers are the ones who load the weights for you and put the number on the bar that you want them to put on the bar.
Personal slave. That's what Matt was always for me.
Personal slave.
Matt.
There you go.
Yeah.
As a game day coach, most of the people we work with aren't people that we personally write training for or that we train on a regular basis. We're hired guns for people who want the best chance when they're in battle. So either the coaches can't go, or their coaches are like, I'm better at programming than I am at game day. So we will review people's videos, their top weights, for a month before the competition, so we can see what they lift like, because we'll work with so many different athletes. And I know one gal, you see her first squat and you think, okay, she maybe has a pound left. But watching her training videos, I know they all look really hard, but she can always do more. So as long as they look normally hard, we still jump, 15 pounds and 10 pounds. And so it's important to research your lifters, to see their idiosyncrasies, to know where their hardest parts are. So if they slow down in a certain spot, they may squat and it might get slow and finish fast. And someone's like, oh yeah, go up 10 kilos, 22 pounds. And I'll see, no, they got slow in the middle. That's their tough spot. We should only go up 15. So it's knowing your lifter, it's doing the research. We do usually like an hour game planning call where we go over best case scenarios. If things don't feel well, what if this happens? What do we want to do? You make a plan when you don't have the high emotions and the high stakes right then and there, because too many times people would let their emotions grab them at a competition, or this is the weight I want. So we do a lot of planning. And then on game day, other than going to the bathroom and lifting the weights on the bar on the platform, we pretty much do everything for you. If you need your water filled, I fill your water. If you need to be calmed down or hyped up, or, we figure out exactly the timing. If you're in a flight of 10, we're going to have you take your last 3 attempts 10 minutes apart. So it's like the platform. If you're in a flight of 6, then you only get 6 minutes in between your last 3 warm-ups, because we want it to be like it is on the platform. So it's a lot of strategy. It's different for each person. Some people like to be super hyped. Some people need you to be really calm. It's knowing your athlete. It's doing the research. It's putting in a lot of time even before the competition. But then when we're there, all they have to do is lift the weight on the bar. We tell them when to this. I even tell people, okay, if you need to go to the bathroom, time to go,
Yes.
So
you did that with me. I noticed that with you and Matt. You literally put blood, sweat, and tears into the competition, even to the point where I thought, did I even do anything? I feel like I had the easiest part, but I definitely was a lot more peaceful. And I really like that you make everything super simple and you're optimizing that person's day. And Matt has a book all about game day coaching, and it's outstanding.
Yeah, anyone out there, it's built, it's written specifically for powerlifting, but the philosophy and psychology and even some of the other things can be used for a lot of other sports and even life. It is, not to plug it, but the game day coaching manual, he could have charged 5 times as much and it would have been worth it.
Oh,
It's
totally.
$65.
Oh,
And
a steal.
it's a steal. Even I've known a couple people that bought it and they said that aren't powerlifters, but they coach. But also they said simply for the first 2 chapters of psychology, and it's like dealing with their athletes in other sports, it's worth it.
Definitely. And I think for this particular podcast, anyone interested in lifting, getting stronger, you don't even have to compete in powerlifting to take advantage of this. But if you do want to be stronger or compete in powerlifting or just train in it, CrossFitters, strongman, strongwoman. I remember going to the strongman gym, Brian Alsru's Never State Gym, and they had Matt Gary's tips up on the whiteboard because many of the lifters in strongman were warming up in a way that was not conducive for top strength and 1 rep max strength. And so you guys are just the experts. I remember going to your gym and I was on the rower for, I don't know how long I was on the rower. And Matt comes up to me and he said, so do you think that's going to be optimal for deadlifting today? Because I had been on the rower for so long and it would fatigue my back. And you guys helped me come up with the percentages on how to warm up properly. And then training. Do you remember how inconsistent I was with the bench press? I feel like I had strength, but you'd say, it's interesting. Every time you grab the bar, you have this amazing knack to grab it in a different spot. And I was like, wow, my hands weren't even. And even with the squat, I didn't have a setup that was consistent. So you guys helped me with that. Deadlifting, I was deadlifting with too many reps and not enough singles. So that on game day competition, it was just harder. So everything you guys do optimizes true strength, competition readiness, and you write programs too. I followed the programs and I thought, oh boy, I wish I was doing this sooner.
Well, I only wrote programs for a couple friends. I'm not a programmer, and Matt used to do a lot of programs. He just got to where it was he wasn't enjoying it as much. He likes the hands-on training and the game day coaching. So he has actually an app where he has some training plan templates that you can do whether you're a master or, just a normal age person. And if you train 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, different templates like that out there. But otherwise, we don't actually write personal training anymore.
Mm-hmm. What's the name of the app again?
It's the SSPT app. Our website, which is supremesportspt.com. If you look on options, you can get the book or you can use the link to go to the training app.
That's awesome. And talking about training consistently and for game day, I did want people to hear how you always shout, "You and me, God." Can you share how that started and what exactly you're doing? I have been blessed to see you compete, not as much as I would like, but I loved seeing you compete at the Arnold Sports Festival. Amazing. Can you share about that?
So, we all have rough days. You didn't sleep, you're not feeling well, or you had a stressful day at work. And I would lots of times, if I was going up to a really heavy weight and I was like, this is going to be really tough, I hope I survive. In my head, I'd be like, you and me, God, I can do this with you. But I only said it in my head. And I'm a bit ashamed of that because I should never worry about speaking how I feel about God and having Jesus as my savior. But people sometimes act weird and treat you differently. And in the gym, I just didn't want to be saying things and having people look at me funny or whatever. Well, one day I was going in. It was a really rough day. I was going really heavy. It was one of my last peps before the meet. And I grabbed the bar and I just screamed, "You and me, God, let's go." And I got under the bar really aggressively and squatted the weight. And then I looked around to see if people were like staring at me, and nobody was. But I was like, okay, that was okay, but we're not going to do that again. And I was at the World Championships and I was getting ready to try the open world record in the squat. And I was just so welled up inside. I was excited. But I was like, I can only do this with the God-given strength and with him on my side. And I wanted to keep him to keep me safe. I didn't knowingly say it out loud. Because I think I was in I don't know if I was in Russia or South Africa or where I was, but I was thinking of saying it in my head, but the Holy Spirit had other ideas, and I screamed it and got up, squatted the world record. Everything was good, and I don't think I said it again the whole rest of the competition, but I actually posted it, and I had people on Facebook, because that was still the popular platform back then. I had people on Facebook reach out to me and say, "Oh, I didn't know you were a Christian. Can we pray together at the next competition?" I actually had someone come up to me in 2016 at a World Championships, and she's like, Are you and me, God? And I was like, yeah, I guess. And she's like, "Can you pray with me? I'm having a really, really rough meet, and I don't know if I can keep going." And I'd never met her, but because she'd seen it on Facebook, so I started clipping my videos that if I said it, I left it on as kind of my way of reaching people. And it's slowly, because I was saying it in my head all the time, and I think it was a combination of less fear because no one had been mad at me for saying it, and also just the Holy Spirit saying, "I'm taking over because you're not speaking it enough." And when I get really fired up, it just kind of became part of what I did. Now, it's not every single lift. Some meets, if I'm having like a rough time, or like the meet right after losing my mom, I was so focused on God and everything that it came out even more. But sometimes it's really loud, sometimes it's medium, but I probably say it anywhere from 3 to 6 times at every competition now. And it's just, I don't like purposely do it. It's just part of my prep, because now it's like me saying, we can do this together.
Wow. I love
Sorry,
that.
long explanation.
Oh, it was perfect. I absolutely loved it. One of my favorite things about you is your faith. It's such a beautiful faith. You are one of the most bold believers I've ever met. And I love that.
Really? Because I don't feel that way.
Wow. It does.
I don't.
It's very obvious. One of my favorite quotes is from St. Francis of Assisi, and it says, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words." Your actions and your demeanor, everything about you exudes the love of Jesus. Friends call you Sunshine. Pat, she always calls you Sunshine. But I think not just the sun being bright in the sky, S-U-N, but even brighter is the sun, S-O-N, Jesus.
Amen.
That shines through you, and you're very bold, and you have this amazing ability to have people that aren't Christians ask you about your faith. That's incredible. That is the best way. So your approach is awesome, and I pray that I can be more like that. And I love that you share "you and me, God." That's definitely one of my favorite quotes.
I feel like that was God's way of using the gift he gave me of strength, of powerlifting, to share with more people, or at least let more people know that I was a believer. I was always the kind of person that hoped that people knew I was a follower of Christ by the way that I treated them. I'm not an evangelist. I'm not going to walk up to a stranger and start preaching, or I'm not like our dear friend Pat, who is just going to walk up to someone and say, "Can I give you a cross?" And her cross ministry is amazing, and she's bold, and she's called to do it that way. And I think we each have our own ways, and we just reach people in different avenues, and I think it's a beautiful thing.
Amen. And I love that. I didn't know this for years about you, that you would compete and you would listen to music that was worship music. Like, I can only imagine. I thought maybe you had Skillet or AC/DC on, because I think that's what you use sometimes in the gym, or Let It Roll by Group One Crew.
That's right.
No Christian rap.
Oh, no, I like Christian rap, but it depends on the type of Christian rap.
Yeah.
Just like regular rap, I like certain regular rap, and the other stuff, not as much.
Mm-hmm.
If it's got a really good beat, like Let It Roll, that's an awesome one. But I always have like 3 or 4 playlists on my iPod to listen. And sometimes I need the AC/DC or the 80s hair bands, because I just need something to pump me up more. And then there's, especially in between waiting to get ready to lift lots of times, then I've got my inspirational Christian playlist. And I was at one competition where they let us choose our song for when we lifted. Each person got their individual song. And I had someone help cut I Can Only Imagine, so that I knew how long it took me to like get to the bar and get set up, that the chorus would be crescendoing as I was walking out the weight. And it was amazing. And it's incredible how a song can be many different things to you. Often, most of the time, one song does the same thing. But the song I Can Only Imagine, for me, I have used to just, like, when you think of what Christ and God has done for us, how it just can well up in you and just make you strong and just make you so appreciative and just get me so excited to lift weights. It can do that. And it was also the first song we played right after my mom passed away, and a song that we played at her funeral. So I can listen to the song and it can take me back to my mom going to heaven and being with Jesus, or it can fire me up enough to help me lift more. It's one of those, and it all depends. There was a song from the movie The Book of Eli, and there's no words, but it's an instrumental piece that if it doesn't well you up, I don't know the name of it, unfortunately, but if it doesn't make you just ready to like battle or cry, one of the, then you're not human. We gotta find the name of it, and you gotta put it in the show notes.
Yes.
Yeah. But yes, so I do have some inspirational playlists. Sometimes everything around me is too hectic at a meet, too much noise, too much this, that I listen to, Stronger, or I Can Only Imagine, or Praise You in This Storm. When I'm hurt and things are going bad, I crank that song, because it's like, you know what, God, I love you no matter what. Give me whatever I've got today and let me be happy with it.
Amen. I love that song by Casting Crowns. And for those that don't know, the other one was by Mercy Me. Such a great song. I have so many more questions. You are incredibly fascinating, and I'm going to ask if we can do another episode or more. But I did want to kind of close in on the fact that while you are one of the strongest humans on the planet physically, also with your character and your faith even more so, I know one thing that really meant a lot to me was when my twin sister was in the hospital before she went to heaven. You were there with me, like right by my side. And I feel like that takes a lot of strength and a lot of faith. A lot of people have a hard time holding someone else's pain. Some people might say, "How are you doing?" They may not really want to know, or maybe they'll be there to listen for a little bit, but you were right there in the trenches with me. And that's something that I'll never forget and I'll always appreciate. And it helped me. And then I was able to actually do that for other loved ones, other friends, before they had someone going to heaven. And I didn't think I would ever have the strength to do something like that. But because you did that for me and you helped hold my pain, which I felt like was much heavier than your world record lifts, which is saying a lot. So I can't thank you enough for that.
Oh, you're welcome. And, I love you. I love Jess. And it's not an easy thing. And some people, it's too hard to be around pain like that, and they don't know what to do. But I guess I've always kind of been a caregiver. And when my mom had her agoraphobia, I kind of tried to take care of the family. So I've just kind of have this inner something inside of me that wants me to take care of people when they're in pain, that wants to at least be there, if it's just to take some of their pain away or listen or just hold their hand or something like that. I just have the overwhelming desire to help people when they're in pain. So thank you for letting me be there for you in the moment.
Oh, the blessing is all mine. Thank you so much for that. And I was going to ask the last thing for today, because I definitely want to pull your arm, twist your arm, make you come back again. But how can people find you and learn more about you?
I don't do a lot of social media, but I do check it. So on Facebook, you can find me, Suzanne Hartwig-Gary. It's actually Suzanne, Sioux-z Hartwig-Gary. I spell it like the Indian, SIOUX-Z. On Instagram, it's Susie52kg, SIOUXZ52kg. And if you want, you can also email me, and it's susie52@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining today. I know you're super busy. You're globetrotting. I don't know what country you're going to be in or time zone. So this really means a lot.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And if you want to reach out about any of the game day coaching or the coaching manual or Matt's training plans, it's supremesportspt.com.
Awesome. Thank you. I see you got the SSPT shirt. Yeah. Represent.
Yeah.
Yes. Time to get joked.
That's right. Oh, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Thank you
It's
for
an honor.
joining. Oh, the honor is ours. And thank you, Strong by Design guests, for listening. Please, if you haven't already done so, subscribe, comment, positive comments only. And if you have something good to say about today, put it there. If it's bad, we'll just say that Chris did this episode. Chris is my boss. I'm just kidding.
If it's constructive criticism, please speak out.
Actually, you're right. Yes, I want to be better and my best self. Yes. Thank you.
Don't be mean, be constructive.
Yes, that's right. So please share with as many people as possible. We thank you. We pray that the Lord bless and protect you, and have a great rest of your day. God bless.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.